Hi there, I'm Heather, and this is my husband, Dr. Ron Llewellyn.
Welcome to Life Together.
A place where we share,
Laugh,
and try to provide helpful information on things like marriage,
relationships, mental health issues.
We've been married for 18 years.
We have 2 cats, no kids.
Yeah, so take any parenting advice with caution.
You know, in 18 years, we've been through a lot. We've learned a ton.
And we just want to share those lessons with you. So we hope you enjoy. Well, hello everybody, and welcome back again. Heather, and this is Ron, and we're back for another episode in our series on depression.
Depression is a liar.
Depression is a liar. And tonight we're going to talk, did I already say this? We're going to talk more about the psychological aspects of depression.
Particular memory impairment.
Wow, we're starting off on a good note. And yeah, so diving deeper into this subject, and yeah.
All right.
Here we go. Take it away.
So in the previous video, we were talking about when I conceptualize what someone's going through, I like to look at it from 4 different perspectives. The first one is biological. The second is psychological. The third is social, and the fourth is spiritual for the spiritual people out there.
You should have quizzed me to see if I could remember what they were.
Well, with the memory problems, why don't you recite what those are?
Biological, psychological, social, and spiritual. Did I get them right?
You got them right.
Okay.
And those are broken down into different categories, which we'll get into a little bit later on. Last video, episode 2, we started with the psychological, just because that's more my realm as a psychologist. And we're going to continue that. And the realm under psychological that we're talking about is cognition or thought. And that's one of the primary areas, but then there's also adaptation and behavior, emotion, and all those other things we've got to address. So today, we're going to stick in cognition under the psychological category, and we're going to talk about something called learned helplessness. Do you know where that concept came from?
I don't.
Did you take Psych 101?
I did, but that was a long time ago.
How long ago was that?
22 years ago. And I can't remember things from 2 minutes ago. So,
it's true.
Yeah.
Well, how does that make you feel?
I'm getting pretty old. Not as old as you.
Shut up. Alright, so learned helplessness. Let's talk just real quick about the concept. It's been around for a long, long time, but a researcher, I believe his name was Martin Seligman, I could be wrong, I might have to correct that. They were doing research, and the research is pretty horrific because I'm an animal, you know, I love animals, but what they did is they had these dog cages, and at least it wasn't cats, but they had these cages for dogs, and the floor of the cage was electrified. They just had to press a button and become electrified, and the dog that was in there would get buzzed pretty hard.
Yikes.
Yeah. And what they would do is they would have the dog locked in the cage, so there was no escape, and they would keep electrocuting. Not like it would be painful, but they would send electricity into the cage, and the dog would feel the pain. And eventually, obviously the dog kept trying to get out, and it couldn't. And finally, when the dog realized there's nothing I can do, they would continue to electrify the floor of the cage, but the dog would just lay there. Then they took it a step further and they opened the door to the cage so the dog could get out. But the dog who had learned helplessness didn't try to escape when the floor was electrified and the door was open. And so they said this is a really good example of learned helplessness. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So let's take it from there.
Let's take it from there.
All right,
on that somber note.
So yeah, animal rights lover, or all that. I didn't do the research. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so how does this apply to human beings? They extended the theory and said that we tend to have three, we talked about attributional errors in another video. This is similar, but specific more to helplessness. So there's some attributional errors that we have specific to learned helplessness. And those they come in these dichotomies. The first dichotomy is what's called specific versus general. So if you start to think that you're helpless, your problems look very general versus specific. In other words, I could look at my life and say, everything sucks, versus something more specific like, my life sucks because my wife won't stop nagging.
It's not true.
But it's a problem. If it's just that one problem that's making my life miserable, we can address that. But if it's just general suckage, we can't do anything about it, right? Because there's nothing specific. So the first dichotomy, specific versus general. And if you start to see things as a general problem that you can do nothing about, then that's an issue.
So you feel that helplessness?
Yeah.
Because how can you tackle this world of problems?
Yes.
Okay.
And the way I describe it to people that I work with, I say, imagine your problems. A depression makes you think it's one large insurmountable mountain. But really what it is comprised of small rocks and things that comprise what looks like a large mountain. But if we take one at a time out and address it, that mountain starts to become smaller.
Okay.
So yeah, it's kind of like taking one thing at a time. The second dichotomy. She has no idea. I didn't even discuss this. Do you want to talk about the second dichotomy?
No, I don't, because I don't know what it is.
All right. So the second dichotomy is stable versus unstable. And I actually got those reversed. I should say unstable. I don't like how this is. I changed the wording on this, actually.
Oh.
So, see, I'm blanking out on it. I'll come back to that. But anyways, the stable versus unstable is the belief that something is never going to change or something will change. So in this terminology, unstable means that it'll change. Although unstable, we attribute negative connotations to it. Whereas stable, we believe it is the way it is, and it's never, ever, ever going to be different.
Okay.
So a depressed person, can you think of a thought a depressed person might have related to this dichotomy of stable versus unstable?
Put me on the spot like that.
I did.
Like the world is out of control, it's never going to change.
That's a good one. I was thinking more along the lines of my wife will not stop nagging.
See, that seemed a little specific.
Or the world is not going to change. And so if it's never going to change, there's no hope.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing you can do about it. You're helpless. All right, so second dichotomy. The third dichotomy is internal versus external. Speaking of locus of control is where we believe the control exists. And I know there's theories out there and that say control is an illusion. And in some respects it is, but not always. I can control lifting this glass. And so that's a fact. And I think some of the relativistic ideas that all this is arbitrary or it's illusory is only creates more helplessness. What? Did I mispronounce it?
No, I have no idea. I said those were big words.
Anyways, internal versus external locus of control. The belief that I have control or the belief that someone else has control. If someone else has control, you're helpless. Right?
Okay.
So those are the three. Real quick recap. I'm going to switch that second one up so I have the right dichotomy. Specific versus general, unstable versus stable, and internal versus external. The second side of things are associated with helplessness. The first is healthier.
Okay.
And I still can't remember the words I switched stable versus unstable out with. But anyways. So let's take a look. What I do, and this is so silly, some of the psychological tools can seem really trite and really silly. And this is one of those, but I find it to be helpful. And so what I did last week is I showed my wife this little grid graph decision-making tool to help determine locus of control. Do you want to describe that?
So it's 4 boxes.
4 boxes.
1, 2, 3, 4. And, well, I don't have it right in front of me. I'm trying to, from memory, which is a bad idea for me.
Yes.
And you take what your problem is. Let's say my wife.
What are the dimensions?
Oh.
See, go ahead.
I don't remember.
It's on the screen.
It will be on your screen.
It'll be on the screen. That's
it's
right.
not on my screen right now.
All right. Do you want me to take it real quick?
Yes,
and then,
please.
Okay, so you got
Just trying to make me
if you
like
look
an
at the
idiot.
screen, you're going to see 4 boxes. And on the top, it's, I can't remember how you wrote this, but we're going to have to modify it because it can go either way. But on the top, it says important over the first box and not important over the second box.
You gotta do it backwards.
Whatever.
For the viewers at home.
For the viewers at home. I can't do that. And then on the left side is going to say can control and can't control. All right? And so what you do is you take each one of your problems that you start to make more specific, and you put them in those boxes. For example, I wrote some problems. Someone might be feeling helpless because they're at midterms or finals and they're sitting there thinking, I'm getting terrible grades, I'm not going to pass. And that's causing a sense of helplessness and depression and anxiety for them. So, is that important or not important?
I think that's important.
For most people.
Yeah.
Some people don't care, but then if they don't care,
then it wouldn't
it's
be
not
a
going to bother
problem.
them. Yeah. So we could label that under the important, and then can you do something about it, or is it something you can't do anything about?
Most likely you can do something about it.
And what could you do about it?
Well, you could study a little harder, you could meet with a tutor, you could meet with your teachers, there's all kinds of things you could do about it.
You could blame your professor.
Yeah.
I used to be a professor. So, you could. Now, one of the things, each one of those 4 squares, once you put it in there, so the first box, which is important and you can control, that box is called do something. That is priority. The second box, which I guess, I don't know, reverse, just look at the screen. Just look at the screen. Which is not important, but you have control. That is called the it doesn't matter box. It's not important and you have control, so do something or don't. It doesn't matter. It's not priority. Then you have the important but you can't control box. And this is where you have to learn to cope. And we'll talk about coping in a little bit. And then you have the can't control and not important box, which is the it just don't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not important. You have no control over it. Let it go. Right? Okay, so utilizing that, we see that this person getting bad grades, who's anxious and depressed, or feeling helpless, they have control over the situation. They could study. So that would land right there in that first box of do something with it.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at another one.
Okay.
Very similar. I'm freaking out. I'm depressed. I'm feeling helpless because I'm broke.
Okay.
Where would you put that?
Sounds like that's an important issue.
Yeah, for most
Unless
people.
you don't mind, being broke.
All right, but if you
But
don't mind, then it's not bothering
It's
you.
not bothering you. So I would say it's important. Probably you can do some things about it.
Okay.
Maybe you need to budget your money a little better.
Okay, that's a preventative measure. Good, good.
Maybe you can find ways to make more money.
Like what?
You get like a second job.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of people making videos of their feet.
And you're gonna
Sorry, I was joking about this the other day. That's
how
an
much
option.
do you charge?
I don't. I'm sorry. Ron thinks
She could charge extra.
because my feet are so big. It's out there, you know. You do you. So yeah, you could, maybe you have to get a second job.
Right. So you can see that some of these break down into a couple of boxes. Number one, let's say you don't get paid for 2 weeks, and there's no way you're going to get an advance from your boss. So you realize, I'm not going to get that paycheck. That's something I'm going to have to figure out then. I'm going to have to cope with not getting the paycheck, but what can I do? You could become basically you could basically think, there's nothing I could do about it, I'm a victim in this situation, and give up and blame people, which is a very common tactic. It's not healthy by any stretch of the imagination. So like Heather said, you sit there and you say, I can sell an organ. I can sell pictures of my feet. I can...
I mean, don't do anything illegal.
Okay.
But,
Yeah,
some
it's
people
not
do that.
advisable. Yeah.
But, I mean, there are options. I mean, are there things maybe you have a garage sale. I mean,
Yeah.
do you have crap in your house you need to sell?
You can sell off your wife's immense selection of shoes.
I don't have that. For my gigantic feet, I don't have that many shoes, honestly. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's take another one. Here's another one. This is a little bit more difficult. I'm sad. I'm depressed. My partner is cheating on me.
Well, if you care about that person, that sounds like an important thing.
Yep.
Is there anything you can do about it? Yes and no, maybe. Have you confronted them about it? I think that's something you can do.
Definitely.
If you're like, well, they've cheated on me, what can I do? Well, then that's what you've decided to do, I guess, is to just let it go. But if you can confront them about it and tell them you're not going to, stick with them if they're going to do that. You're not going to stand for that. Have that confrontation. Sounds like that's step one.
Yeah.
Right?
So what I want to point out here is I want you to take a look at what Heather's doing. She's sitting there and breaking this down into different levels. As she suggested, you can't change their behavior, so that's going to be something you'll have to cope with if you decide to stay with them. If you love them, it's going to hurt, and there's ways you can cope with that, but you're still going to have to cope with it, whether you use healthier or alcohol coping strategies. So, but there are other things. Beyond the things that you can cope with, you can address this with them. What I often tell guys who come in to talk to me, and I don't think a lot of them like to hear this, but I'll say, okay, if you love them and you want to stay together, how are you going to be the person they want to be with? Unless they're just a dirty, rotten cheater, maybe there is something you can do. Maybe you could change your own behavior to make the situation better. But depression always leads you to believe that there's nothing you can do. And once you believe that, you start to believe you're helpless. Over a period of time of constantly feeling helpless, you become hopeless. And research shows when you see the flip from helplessness to hopelessness, suicide rates increase dramatically. So, the important element with this is you have to sit down and start to find out, what can I do? Extremely, extremely important. And just the act of deciding to do something means you've already taken control. So there's that.
Well, there's that.
There's that. All right. Well, I don't think we're going to get into coping strategies tonight, because that's kind of a whole nother section in terms of psychology and depression. When I speak about adaptation, what that is, it's basically how are you coping with the situation. So we'll probably pick that up on the next episode.
All right.
All right. If you have any questions, message us, or I don't know how you can do that. By the way, well, something I did a long time ago.
You can do. This is a real professional operation we've got going here.
Let me tell you something. I have a couple of email addresses. For clients that I do not, well, for clients that I want to meet with, I give them my normal email address. For the clients who I don't want to tell them I don't want to meet with them, but I want to discourage them, I have an email address that is notyouraverageserialkiller@gmail.com.
Gosh, he's so full of it.
I guarantee it. Email me on that address. I'll respond. I have that address. And I'll tell you what, anyone I've given that address to has not come back.
Oh my word, he's full of it. So we do have an actual email address. You can find it on our website. Ignore what he's saying.
It's a real email address.
I'm sure it is. Oh my word.
So email us at notyouraverageserialkiller@gmail.com. Okay, real quick. I have never given that to a client. I'll admit that right now, but I do have it. Now go ahead and give them the rest of the information. We'll sign off.
Okay. So we'll put that little box thing we've been talking about this whole time. It'll be up on the screen. And if I can get Ron to help me with the website a little bit more, we'll have it available there as well if you want to download it and use it. It's, I mean, you could probably make it yourself, but you know,
yes,
download a PDF and utilize it as you will. But check out our website, follow us on Facebook and Instagram, all the places. Follow our YouTube channel, and yeah, hopefully the next one will be a little more professional and on top of things. But anyway, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Cheerio.
Bye.